G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Adventure News. We've got Cfmoto production ready 800Mt-X. KTM have been very busy as well, with a whole slew of bikes being caught out testing with new spy shots, with one of them being the 1390 Rally. Triumph's chief chassis engineer has also leaked images of a more off-road capable 400X Scrambler. Also pretty big news from Kove. Their CEO, the guiding light of the entire company, has decided to step down. And lastly, stick around to the end because we've got fresh spy shots of KTM's 390 Enduro.
Start it up.
Kove's CEO has stepped down from the company and his term ended at the end of February, citing creative differences with the other executives on the board. That's basically the information we get, nothing more. One of the big reasons why I held off on talking about it, just because I wanted to see if any real solid information did come to the surface. It has not. But I did want to talk about what this means for Kove. Now, you could cut this a couple of different ways. The rosy side of this is that he has just stepped down and that the executives on the board have a strong vision. Everything's going to roll forward as normal, and they've got someone else to fill the position with a clear creative drive to keep the company on the same trajectory it's already been on. Of course, there's also the flip side of this, because the CEO, he was clearly the leader and the visionary for his company. He had an idea of what he wanted to accomplish and everyone fell in line behind him, and he was making waves in the motorcycle industry. The Kove 450 Rally was a very big deal for us in the off-road world. And losing someone with a creative vision that is the driving force behind a company can be a very big loss and something that's very hard to deal with. Having lost their CEO and their leader, will they lose touch and slowly fade into history? Or was this a strategic move by the other executives, seeing the potential of Kove and really wanting to push it into the stratosphere in the off-road world and really take over in a big way, and maybe they thought this current CEO was holding them back? We really don't know. It's such a hard topic to talk about, but it does concern me. There's an awful lot of unknowns to be answered here, and you really do need a little bit of time to see how things are going to play out. It certainly isn't an all-out fire yet, but this is a little bit of smoke in my opinion. I'd love to know your thoughts. Someone posted a rendered image of a 400X, but with more off-road characteristics. Particularly what stood out was spoke wheels. And what really got the internet set on fire about this is who posted it. And the guy who posted this up was Felipe Lopez. Who the hell is that, you ask? I had the same question until I did some digging. He was the lead chassis development engineer at Triumph. So that really got people excited that someone so high up in Triumph had leaked an image of a Scrambler 400X with spoke wheels and slightly more off-road characteristics. What isn't clear when he posted this up, just teasing this image and giving it a name and saying coming soon, is whether Philippe is acting in an official capacity for Triumph. Triumph's socials haven't got anything about this, neither confirming nor denying. Now, the interesting thing here is Philippe now has his own company. So the question here is this going to be a bike built by Triumph, or is this going to be a bike that is going to be modified by Philippe from his own company and then sold on as a bespoke Scrambler? Triumph has named one of their Tiger 800s Tramontana before. Now, this wasn't a model that was getting pumped out of the showroom floors. It was actually a bike that competed in the Pan Africa Rally. I think the Triumph 400X is a fantastic little bike already. It could only be made better by a more off-road capable version. The next bike is a very popular bike at last year's motorcycle show. You will know it as the MTX concept bike that a lot of people were really raving about its potential. Now it's finally ready for production, officially called the 800Mt-X. Now, if you're looking at this thing and thinking to yourself, that looks very, very familiar to me, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Well, if you color it in orange, I think you'll have the answer. This is basically a KTM 790 Adventure. I think the driving narrative of this bike will be, if you want a KTM 790 Adventure or a bike of that ilk at a lower price tag, this is probably going to be the bike for you. What we need to point out here that we know that this is production ready, but it hasn't been confirmed by Cfmoto. What we've got instead is type approval documents. So obviously this X version is going to be the most hard hardcore in the MT range. The power specs quoted in the type approval documents are also identical to what KTM lists for their 790 Adventure. So 94 horsepower, and it's coming off the same production line as the 790 units anyway, so I would expect identical motors to what you find in your KTM 790. And this would pretty much make a certainty that it will have the same slipper clutch and 6-speed transmission as the 790 does. Cycle World are claiming that the frame also looks identical to the KTM 790 Adventure, so it doesn't look like there's going to be any major differences in the chassis of this bike either. And the fuel tank is very reminiscent to the 790 and 890 tank, being lower slung on either side of the bike, although it visually does look slightly different, and I'll get into the possibility of why that is now. And that comes down to the weight. The MT-X is listed at 214 kilos or 471 pounds, whereas the 790 Adventure is actually coming in a little bit heavier at 218 kilos or 480 pounds. Now that's got me thinking, with the slightly different looking fuel tanks on this bike to the 790 and 890, could that be accounted for a slightly different design in the fuel tanks and perhaps slightly less capacity, which would equate for the differences in weight? Because as far as I can tell it, that's the biggest significant detail that stands out to me. That could produce a major difference in the variation of the weight claim for the MT-X versus the 790 Adventure. We also know, and we can see in those images as well, that it is definitely a 21 and 18 spoke wheel setup, other than the clear difference of the 1917 wheel setups on the more road-focused versions. There's also the suspension travel and ground clearance. The road-based versions do with roughly 6 inches of travel, and while it isn't quoted in these type approval documents, the suspension travel of this MT-X, you can see from the images that this looks very similar to the 790 Adventure, so I would expect this to have travel much closer to the 790 Adventure as compared more road-based MTs currently in Cfmoto's lineup. And the wheelbase of the 800 MT-X actually is an identical wheelbase to the 890 Adventure R. This suggests that this 800 MT-X will have longer travel, taller suspension, much like the R version, rather than the standard version of the KTM Adventure bikes. There are a few ways that Cfmoto are saving money here. The major difference that stands out is they're not using WP suspension. Cfmoto use KYB. This is one of the ways they'll probably be able to shave costs. I would expect it probably not to be as capable as the WP suspension you find on the 790 and 890 Adventures R's in particular. 800 MT-X, the production version, is not going to be using the Brembo brakes. They're using J-Juan or J-Juan, however you want to pronounce it. It's basically a subsidiary of Brembo with less quality parts. With all the accessories available, it's expected from the type approval documents that there will be 8 different combinations of this bike with different screens and luggage options. With all the gadgets and widgets we've come to expect out of adventure bikes, it also appears that this will be a global motorcycle. This won't be a China-only market motorcycle. I'd love to know what you think. Would you definitely be in the market for a cheaper version of the 790 Adventure R? Are you still a little bit standoffish about a Chinese company and the quality concerns? I'd love to know your thoughts, so chuck them down below. Sticking with KTM, we've got some fresh spy shots of the big boy adventure bikes of the 1390 Adventure S, as well as the KTM 1490 Super Adventure. The numbers on these bikes is starting to get a little bit ridiculous. Very powerful, road-focused adventure tourers, which clearly have 17-inch wheel combos, so they're very, very road-orientated. In fact, the wheel sizes indicate that these don't really belong off-road in any serious capacity at all. What everyone didn't expect to see, and these spy shots reveal, is a 1390 Rally. Now, the idea of a 1390, or technically a 1350cc twin, and the word rally in the same sentence seem a little strange to you. You're not alone. That is a big motor to be called a rally. But when you look at the bike, you can see this is very off-road focused. And a criticism I have seen crop up in recent history is that KTM's recent batch of big adventure bikes haven't been as off-road focused. There is a decent subset of people that not only have the skills, but love the challenge of ripping off-road on a big adventure bike with proper off-road capability. It can be a lot of fun if you're into that kind of thing. Think of bikes like KTM's old 950 Rally here is what I would be thinking about when you look at this 1390 Rally. That's what they're really going for here. This could be an exciting upgrade if you've been looking for a 950 rally in the modern era. And you can clearly see from these spy shots that this is inspired by their Dakar heritage. It's got that definite Dakar rally bike look to it. Of course, we know it will come with WP suspension, but we can also see that the tires are far more aggressive than what you see on the more road-orientated adventure bikes from KTM. These look fairly aggressive and ready for the dirt. That rally windscreen is another dead giveaway as to this motorcycle's intention, or at least the look they're going for with that rally look with that upright screen. You can see in the images that it looks like a decent amount of travel, but it should be fairly off-road capable coming from KTM. So I would think of this 1390 rally of what the 890 Adventure R, the 790 Adventure R are trying to accomplish here. Basically a bigger version of those bikes. It's got those twin side tanks as well, but for the guys that are really into the big bikes off-road, let me know down below, is this the kind of thing you were hoping for from KTM? Kind of a spiritual successor to the 950 rally of old? Chuck your thoughts down below. We've got new spy shots of the 390 Enduro. We can't really see too much from these images. The image is pretty piss poor. Doesn't really tell us anything new that we haven't seen, but it does confirm a few things. That high front mudguard definitely speaks proper off-road, as well as the looks of the headlight and the cowl and the silhouette of the bike. This looks like a smaller version of the 690 Enduro, which of course is wholeheartedly a dual sport. So this is clearly what KTM are going for with this model variation of the 390 Adventure. Also, the frequency with which we've seen all these spy shots, spy videos, spy pictures, which yes, I know a lot of the time these are intentionally leaked by the manufacturer. What it's called and how it sits in the lineup remains to be seen, but this clearly is a trimmed down and will be a fairly off-road capable, at least compared to the current 390 Adventure offering from KTM. So I'm really excited about this. I think this will be a great halfway house for someone looking for pretty decent off-road capability, but not really wanting to sacrifice the levels of comfort on road that you might have to do with a KLX 300 or a CRF 300L, and really invigorating the small displacement dual sport market in a big way, hoping that they put a 2118 wheel setup. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, guys, don't forget to stay shiny side up.